Welcome to Factoring 101 by the Factoring Wizard. So first we're going to start off with the difference of squares. What you need to know first is about multiplying binomials. This right here is an example of what binomials are. By multiplying them, you would FOIL them, which stands for first, outer, inner, last. So first would be the x times x, which is x squared. Outer would be x times negative 3, which is minus 3x. Inner would be 3 times x, which is plus 3x. And last would be 3 times negative 3, which would be negative 9. The middle terms cancel out, and you are left with x squared minus 9. That would be your answer. Here's another example of a binomial. 2x plus 7 and 2x minus 7. So first, 2x times 2x, which should be 4x squared. Outer, which would be negative 14x. Inner, which is plus 14x. And last, which is negative 49. The middle terms cancel out, and you are left with 4x, which should be squared, minus 49. There, it's squared. A quadratic written in this form would factor out to be a perfect square. Otherwise, it factors to ax plus b and ax minus b. So x squared minus 25 factors to be x minus 5 and x plus 5. If those were to be FOILed, then you would result with x squared minus 25. However, if you change it to an adding, that cannot be done. Why? Because it's prime. Meaning that if you were to try and FOIL it, you would never end up with x squared plus 25. It's not possible. Moving on to factoring by grouping. Step 1. Group the terms. Step 2. Is there a common factor for each group? Step 3. Are the parentheses the same? If so, good. Step 4. Put the factors together. Let's solve this by factoring by grouping. So first, you set it into the pairs, and then you are going to factor out the like terms. So you take out the 3v squared, and you are left with v minus 6. Now you take out the negative 7 on this pair, and you are left with v minus 6. As you can see, both of the terms inside the parentheses are the same. And as we said, if so, good. Now what's left over is v minus 6, which is what's in both the parentheses, and it was the same, so that means it's right, and 3v squared minus 7, which is what's left over. Here's example number 2. 10x cubed plus 16 squared plus 25 x plus 40. So group the terms. Group the first two together and the second two together. And you can take out a 2x squared, and you are left with 5x plus 8. And for the other two, you can take out a 5, and you are left with 5x plus 8. As you can see, what's in the parentheses on both sides is the same, and as we said earlier, if so, good. In the end, you are left with 2x squared plus 5, which is what's left over, and 5x plus 8, which is correct because it is in both sides of the parentheses. Smiley face, check mark. Moving on to factoring trinomials. Two x squared plus 9x minus 5 has 3 terms, meaning that this is a trinomial. We are going to factor 2x squared plus 9x minus 5, which was our example. 2x squared plus 9x minus 5. Step 0, you are going to identify the A, B, and C values. The A value is what's in front of the x squared. The B value is what's in front of the x. So the A value would be 2 because it's in front of the x squared. The B value is what's in front of the x, which would be 9. And the C value stands alone, which is negative 5. Step 1. You're going to multiply A times C. A value is 2. C value is negative 5. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Step 2. This is a little tricky. But you are going to find the numbers that multiply to be what A times C was as found in step 1. But those same numbers must add together to be the B value. So what times what equals negative 10, but at the same time, if you add those together, would equal 9, which is the B value. So here we go. A times C was negative 10. So what times what equals negative 10, but at the same time, what plus what being the same numbers equals positive 9. So you could use negative 1 and 10. So negative 1 times 10 is negative 10, and negative 1 plus 10 is 9. Perfect. Step 3. You are going to replace the b value, or the middle term, with the two numbers that we found earlier in step 2. Alright, continuing on, you take the middle term and you replace it with the numbers we found from the previous steps. So it would become 2x squared minus 1x, or negative x, plus 10x minus 5. Now, based on what we learned earlier, you could easily guess that the next step, step number 4, we are going to group the terms. So we're going to group the first two terms together, and then we're going to group the second two terms together.
Throughout, which won't give you too many problems, and then
So there are our first two terms grouped together, and there are our second two terms grouped together. Now we're going to factor
tomorrow after school, or
by grouping, as we learned just a little while ago. You're going to pull out the 1x, or just the x, and that becomes, leaving in the parenthesis, 2x minus 1. You're going to pull out a 5, which leaves us with 2x minus 1. As you can see, what's in the parentheses are the same. That is a very good thing. What's left over is 1x plus 5, and what we have in the parentheses, which is 2x minus 1, which we know is correct because both parentheses had the same. Now, if we were to solve this, you would set these equal to 0, meaning you have your x plus 5, and you have your 2x minus 1, which again was in both sets of parentheses. This is very important. You need to know that to solve, you must set them equal to 0. So if we set x plus 5 equal to 0, you subtract 5 from both sides, x equals negative 5. We set 2x minus 1 equals 0, add 1 to both sides, divide by 2, divide by 2, x equals 1/2. Go back and pause that video if you need to. Let's do another example of this. X squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. It's set equal to 0, meaning that we're going to have to solve. But before we can do that, we have to factor by grouping. Which means that, again, we're going to be factoring a trinomial. As you can see in this entire lesson, everything ties together. So step 1, a times c, which equals negative 8. In step 0, we did identify our a, b, and c. So what times what equals a times c, which is negative 8, but also adds together to create a sum of 2, which is our b value. So 4 and negative 2.
There's an exponent. Would you do the exponent first?
So we take the middle term and we split it into the two numbers that we found from step 2. And it becomes x squared plus 4x minus 2x minus 8. Which would also be set equal to 0 because again we are still solving, but we don't need that just quite yet. So we're going to factor by grouping. We group the two terms together and then the last two terms together. Then we factor out of that. We can take out an x. We're left with x plus 4. We can take out a negative 2, and you are left with x plus 4. Which in the parentheses are both the same thing, which is a very good thing. You are left over with x plus 4, which is in both the parentheses, again clarifying that we are correct, and x minus 2, which is what's left over. So to solve, you must set them equal 0. X plus 4 equals 0. Subtract 4 from both sides. X equals negative 4. X minus 2 equals 0. Add 2 to both sides. X equals 2. You solve for the roots or the x-intercepts, whatever you want to call them. Alright, moving on to word problems. A ball is thrown up vertically upward from the ground level with an initial velocity of 128 feet per second. Then its height h after t seconds is given by the equation ht equals negative 16 squared plus 128t, and the air resistance is not included. You can go back and pause that if you need to read it again. So what is our question here? What exactly are we trying to find in this word problem? So we're trying to find out how long it will take for the ball to return to the ground. To do that, as we found out earlier, to solve, you have to set everything equal to 0. So by setting the height equal to 0, the 0 in the equation it changes to 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 128t. Then you factor out the t to get t in parentheses negative 16t plus 128 equals 0. Again, setting it equal to 0 so we can solve. Then t equals 0. So negatives, you change it to t equals 0. So negative 16t plus 128 equals 0. Then negative 16t equals negative 128. Therefore, t equals 8. And the answer is it will take 8 seconds for the ball to return to the ground. Alright, thank you everyone and happy studying.